Spinoza's Pantheism, Key Concepts. First of all, the term pantheism comes from the two Greek words, pan, which means all, of everything, and theos, which means God, or divine. Pantheism therefore literally means, all is God, or all is divine, or everything is God. Formally defined, pantheism is a view of reality that tends to identify the world with God, or God with the world. It is important to note that pantheism is not so much a doctrine, as it is the implication of views expressed in terms of the world, God, the absolute, or infinity. It generally emphasizes the immanence of God in the world and de-emphasizes, or ignores, his transcendence over the world. However, since no one has as yet failed to make some distinction between transcendent and immanent aspects of infinite being, there never has been a complete and utter pantheism. It is also important to note that the scholastics tend to reduce pantheism to a form of atheism on the ground that identification of God with the world implies the denial of him as transcendent and really distinct from the world, a view fundamental to all forms of theism. However, the majority of those who are labeled pantheists manifest a strong religious commitment to God in one way or another. In fact, many of them are properly classified as religious thinkers. Again, views of reality termed pantheistic usually embody some limitation that effectively negates complete identification between God and the world. One such limitation now identifies itself as panentheism and claims many earlier thinkers as proponents. Beyond this, a more general element of restriction is found in monism, which distinguishes between absolute and finite being, but reduces one to an illusion or appearance of the other. Interpretations of such reductions, of course, differ widely. On Spinoza's pantheism. Benedict de Spinoza, also known as Baruch Spinoza, was a Jewish rational naturalist. He was best known for his work titled Ethics, which laid out in geometric form arguments for the existence of an impersonal God, the identity of mind and body, determinism, and a way of overcoming the dominance of the passions and achieving freedom and blessedness. His theological political treatise was a landmark in the history of biblical criticism. He was also, in that work, the first major philosopher in the Western tradition to argue for democracy and for freedom of thought and expression. Spinoza's relentless drive for the naked truth was of singular intensity, and his scientific assessment of traditional Jewish thought thoroughly uncompromising. His aim was to contemplate things as they really are rather than as we would like them to be. Anthropocentrism is peremptorily and unceremoniously banished from his philosophical purview. Despite Spinoza's unadorned style, considerable controversy still envelops the interpretation of the very foundations of his thought. Now, Spinoza's pantheism had at least three sources, namely, his ideal of human felicity, his concept of explanation, and his notion of the degrees of human knowledge. His explicit aim was to discover a good that would be independent of all the ordinary contingencies of chance and misfortune. Only that which is capable of completely filling and occupying the mind can be the supreme good in Spinoza's sense. For Spinoza, the only knowledge that could satisfy these requirements would be the knowledge that the mind is part of the total system of nature, and is at one with it when recognizing that everything is as it must be. According to Spinoza, felicity is the knowledge of necessity, for if the mind can accept the necessity of its own place in the whole ordering of things, there will be room neither for rebellion nor for complaint. Thus, from the outset, Spinoza's characterization of the supreme good required that his philosophy exhibits the whole universe as a single connected system. On his concept of explanation. For Spinoza, to explain anything is to demonstrate that it cannot be other than it is. To demonstrate this entails laying bare the place of what is to be explained within a total system. It is important to note that Spinoza did not make any distinction between contingent causal connections and necessary logical connections. This is because, for Spinoza, a deductive system in which every proposition follows from a set of initial axioms, postulates, and definitions mirrors the structure of the universe, in which every finite mode of existence exemplifies the pattern of order that derives from the single substance, deus, sive natura, God, or nature. Hence, there can be only one substance, not a multiplicity of substances. For Spinoza so defined the notion of substance that the relation of a property to the substance of which it is a property is necessary, and therefore intelligible and explicable. However, the relation of one substance to another must be external and contingent, and therefore unintelligible and inexplicable. But for Spinoza it is unintelligible that what is unintelligible should be thought to exist. Hence, there can be only one substance. God and nature could not be the names of two distinct and independent substances. It follows that for Spinoza, God cannot be said to be the creator of nature, except in a sense quite other than that of Christian or Jewish orthodoxy. Spinoza did distinguish between nature as active, natura naturans, and nature as passive product, natura naturata, and insofar as he identified God with nature as creative and self-sustaining rather than with nature as passive, he could speak of God as the immanent cause of the world. But this is quite different from the orthodox conception of divine efficient causality. Also, in Spinoza's view, there can be no divine providential intentions for particular agents and there can be no miracles. But if this is the case, what then of the Bible? Spinoza regarded the Bible as an expression of truth in the only mode in which the ordinary, unreflective, irrational person is able to believe it or be guided by it. Such individuals need images, for their knowledge is of the confused kind that does not rise to the rational and scientific explanation of phenomena, let alone to that scientia intuitiva, intuitive knowledge, by which the mind grasps the whole necessity of things and becomes identical with the infinita idea Dei, infinite idea of God. Freed from all those passions that dominated her actions so long as she did not grasp them intellectually, for Spinoza, the human person is moved only by a fully conscious awareness of her place in the whole system. It is this awareness that Spinoza also identified as the intellectual love of God. In using theological language to characterize both nature and the good of human life, Spinoza was not concealing an ultimately materialistic and atheistic standpoint. He believed that all the key predicates by which divinity is ascribed apply to the entire system of things, for it is infinite, at once the uncaused causa sui and causa omnium, cause of itself and cause of everything, and eternal. On a last note, even if Spinoza's attitude to the Bible was that it veils the truth, he believed that it is the truth that it veils. He considered his doctrine basically identical with both that of the ancient Hebrew writers and that of St. Paul. This did not save him from condemnation by the synagogue in his lifetime, let alone from condemnation by the church afterward.